It happened right up the street from my house. And the girl, she just came and she was like, she had a sign and she was asking for help because she had a baby. And I was in the back seat, so I wasn't really paying any mind until I seen someone actually approach the car. And then that's when, it just all just happened so fast. And now she's gone.
It was a bitter December night. A woman stood on the street, holding a baby and clutching a sign that read, "Please help me feed my baby." Jacquelyn Smith, a kind-hearted mother and brilliant engineer, saw someone in need and did what came naturally. She reached out to help. But in a matter of seconds, that simple act of kindness became a horrifying betrayal. What seemed like a random, senseless crime would soon unravel into something far more sinister, an unthinkable deception that would shake an entire community to its core. Welcome back to Chilling Fireside Stories, where we uncover the most unsettling true crime cases while honoring the victims and their stories. Now, settle in and let's begin. Before we delve into the shocking details of this case, let's take a moment to honor Jacquelyn Smith for the remarkable woman she was beyond the headlines. Born on July 4th, 1964, in Providence, Rhode Island, Jacquelyn was a woman of faith, a devoted mother, and a highly accomplished electrical engineer. She built a successful career working for the Department of Defense at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, where her intelligence, dedication, and strong work ethic earned her the admiration of her colleagues. Jacquelyn was a loving mother to 2 adult sons from a previous relationship. One of her sons was in college, while the other had graduated and joined the U.S. Coast Guard. Her family-oriented nature and compassionate spirit defined her life, making her tragic death all the more heartbreaking. In 2014, Jacquelyn married Keith Smith, a man who appeared to be a devoted husband. Keith had a daughter, Valeria, from a previous relationship. On the night of November 30th, 2018, the Smith family gathered to celebrate Valeria Smith's 28th birthday. Valeria, her father Keith, and her stepmother Jacquelyn enjoyed an evening of food, dancing, and laughter at the American Legion Hall. But as the family left the venue just before midnight, no one could have foreseen the tragedy that was about to unfold. As the family was driving back home, just a few blocks from their house, they noticed a woman standing on the street holding a sign that read, "Please help me feed my baby." Keith slowed the car and rolled down the passenger window. Jacquelyn, known for her generous and compassionate heart, wanted to offer money to the woman. However, what seemed like an innocent act of kindness quickly spiraled into a nightmare. At 12:30 a.m. on December 1st, Keith placed a frantic 911 call, reporting that Jacquelyn had been stabbed while seated in the passenger seat. Valeria, sitting in the back seat, bore witness to the horrifying attack. Despite rushing Jacquelyn to Johns Hopkins Hospital, her injuries proved fatal. She had sustained several stab wounds, and her death was attributed to a sudden, unprovoked assault by 2 individuals who fled the scene. Keith later recounted that stopping to help would prove to be Jacquelyn's fatal mistake. On December 2nd, the day after Jacquelyn's tragic death, Keith Smith gave an interview about the incident.
3 blocks away, it was a girl out with a baby in her arms. It was like drizzling, it was cold, and my wife just felt moved to give her something. So at the stop sign, she waved her over to come on over to the car, and then out of nowhere, some guy came over while walking with her. And I hit my window, and Jacquelyn went to hand the money out, and the guy just leaned over and said, "Can I thank your wife?" And I said, "You can thank my wife." And within that split second, this guy commenced to stabbing my wife. He snatched her necklace off her neck, and the girl snatched the pocketbook, and they all both ran to some basketball court. Before I knew it, I jumped out my car to run after him, but then I came back because my wife needed me more.
Did you even know she was stabbed with them?
It happened so quick that when I looked and seen all I did was slam it in park to go chase these people. But then when I seen how my wife was screaming, I came back because I could have caught one of them, but the police told me that wouldn't have been wise to chase a suspect because you don't know where you're running to. So I don't know.
So you didn't even know your wife was hurt until you heard her
Yeah,
scream?
no. I knew she was stabbed.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, blood was everywhere. It was something that it was horrific for something like that to happen. But I'm right now just absorbing all of it, and trying to see how I can move past this. But I'm not gonna move past this until I talk to whoever my congressman is about banning panhandling.
You want the city to make a change here.
I want the city.
You're already beginning to see that.
I'm already seeing it because now from this tragedy with my wife, I don't even look at panhandlers the same way. I look at them as a threat to my life now. So that's what I'm gonna push for, and I'm gonna make it in my wife's name, Jacquelyn Smith. She didn't die in vain. She didn't die in vain. I'm gonna make sure she didn't. So I just thank all the support I've been getting, all the support they've been giving me, because I never would have made this through by myself.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I just want to let Baltimore know to be careful when you feel like you want to give, because you don't know what the intentions are of the person that you're giving to.
Baltimore law enforcement joined the Smith family in urging caution when it came to helping strangers, emphasizing the unpredictability of people's intentions. One officer's remark, "You never truly know the intentions of the person you're trying to help," struck a chord with many, mirroring Keith's own sentiment that the tragedy had fundamentally altered his perspective on trust and humanity. The strategy employed to draw Jacquelyn into harm's way, a desperate individual pleading for help, was particularly disturbing. While authorities stressed that many experiencing homelessness genuinely need assistance, they also warned of those who might exploit this vulnerability for malicious purposes. This unsettling revelation sent ripples of fear, not just through Baltimore, but across the country as media coverage of Jacquelyn's death intensified. The case resonated so deeply that even public figures like Oprah Winfrey spoke out. Reflecting on Jacquelyn's tragic outcome, Oprah tweeted, "I've done this 1,000 times but will think twice before ever doing it again," encapsulating the apprehension that many felt. Amid the public outcry, investigators faced significant challenges in validating the events described by Keith and Valeria.
We were literally 2 blocks from my home.
And your stepmom saw this woman and said, "Stop! I want to give her money."
Yes.
And then take me through.
Yeah, the man, it was 2 of them, and a guy had came, because I'm in the back seat, so anytime anyone approached the car, that's what I remember, and the guy was like, "Can I thank you? Can I thank you?" Because she was going to give them, I think my father said she took out a 10 or something, she was going to really help them out, and he's like, "Can I thank you?" And as he leaned in the car, he just starts stabbing her. He just started stabbing her, and then they just ran. They took off, and my father got out the car and was chasing them. He was trying to chase them, and that's the moment I saw my whole life flash before my eyes, because I'm like, my about to get stabbed. How could you just leave me like that? And I'm like, "Dad, she's bleeding, she's gonna go, what's going on?" And then he came back, and we went to the emergency. Well, we didn't go to the emergency room. We almost drove through the daggone hospital. I don't know exactly where we were at. But the officer on the phone, he talked to us the whole way there. He talked us through everything. And, we've just been getting so much help and support.
Despite combing the neighborhood, speaking with residents, and carefully examining the area where the attack was said to have occurred, detectives found no tangible evidence. The location itself, largely deserted and with few inhabitants, offered minimal clues, further complicating their pursuit of the truth. The lack of evidence extended to the Smith family's vehicle, a 2012 Audi A7. Although it was processed thoroughly, the only fingerprints discovered belonged to Keith. Other items, such as black gloves, yellow rubber gloves, and a broken acrylic fingernail matching Valeria's set, didn't yield any leads on external suspects. Even advanced measures like extracting GPS data from the vehicle's computer failed to provide clarity. With no weapon, no witnesses, and no unidentified DNA or fingerprints, investigators found themselves at a standstill. The descriptions given by Keith and Valeria had yet to yield any suspects, despite efforts from Baltimore's homeless outreach team to identify individuals matching their account. The case hung in uncertainty, casting doubt on the story as initial inconsistencies began to surface. The search for answers in Jacquelyn Smith's tragic murder continued as her stepdaughter Valeria made a heartfelt plea for anyone with information to come forward and help bring justice to her stepmother.
I just want want them to find, if anybody knows anybody, if anybody has any information, please help us and find out who did this to my stepmother, please.
Despite the family's emotional calls for help, investigators faced significant challenges in verifying the details of the crime scene. To piece together the timeline of that fateful evening, detectives turned to surveillance footage across the city. They confirmed that the Smith family left the American Legion Hall at 11:45 p.m., but faced a perplexing gap in evidence. Reviewing 27 CCTV cameras along the route Keith and Valeria claimed to have taken to Valeria's home, detectives found no footage of their Audi in the described areas. Even motion-activated residential cameras failed to capture the vehicle or the alleged attack. In their next steps, investigators analyzed cell phone data. Keith's phone showed no activity until the 911 call, but Valeria's phone told a different story. Rather than heading south toward Valeria's home as stated, the family had traveled north to Druid Hill Park near the Maryland Zoo, where they remained for approximately 15 minutes, an unmentioned stop in their accounts to the police. Adding to the puzzle, Jacquelyn's phone activity raised questions. Although it was reported that she had her phone with her on the night of the attack, its last activity was logged earlier that afternoon from her home in Aberdeen, suggesting the device may never have left the house. Meanwhile, pawn shops across the city were checked for Jacquelyn's stolen belongings, her necklace, purse, and phone, but none surfaced. However, her Visa card was eventually flagged for unauthorized use by 3 teenagers who claimed they found it in a Michael Kors clutch left at a bus stop. The location of the bus stop aligned with the route shown in Keith and Valeria's cell phone data, but contradicted the path they described to police. 3 months into the investigation, detectives still had no evidence linking the crime to the alleged panhandlers. Instead, they uncovered a series of inconsistencies and contradictions in Keith and Valeria's statements. Keith, for instance, alternated between blaming the man or the woman for taking Jacquelyn's purse, creating further doubt about his account. Initially eager to speak out and warn others about the dangers of trusting strangers, Keith abruptly withdrew from the media once the case attracted national attention. When presented with cell phone location data that contradicted his account, Keith Smith shifted his story once again. He now claimed that he had been lost that night and, embarrassed to admit it, took his family to a park where they spent time reviewing photos on their phones. However, this explanation did little to appease investigators, who were growing increasingly suspicious of Keith and his daughter, Valeria. Shortly after this interview, Keith began making plans to leave the state. He agreed remotely to a lease for a modest home in Florida, rented a moving truck, and swiftly packed up his belongings before driving away on February 4th. Neighbors reported seeing him load a large truck rapidly and then disappearing without a word. Valeria, after requesting an attorney during her own questioning, also left Maryland and later reunited with her father. Unbeknownst to Keith, law enforcement had been tracking his movements closely. Seemingly aware of being monitored, he attempted to evade surveillance by changing his phone number, switching providers, and even shipping a new phone to Valeria. Despite these efforts, authorities remained a step ahead. In February 2019, Keith made several attempts to book flights out of the United States, first to Canada, then to Cuba, but was thwarted due to his lack of a valid passport. Undeterred, he plotted alternative escape routes, including traveling to Mexico without passing through formal border checkpoints. His search for options led him to rent a car in Texas on March 1st, a move that spurred immediate action by law enforcement in Baltimore. On March 3rd, an arrest warrant was issued for both Keith and Valeria. At the time, they were reportedly just 20 minutes away from the Mexican border, in what authorities deemed a clear attempt to flee prosecution for first-degree murder. By the end of the day, Texas State Police apprehended the pair, acting swiftly on the notifications issued by Baltimore investigators. Officials commended the tenacity and dedication of the detectives who had pursued the evidence relentlessly, even in the face of elaborate lies and deception. The arrest warrant, while not detailing the specifics of how the murder occurred, highlighted the inconsistencies in Keith and Valeria's accounts and their inability to provide any plausible alternative suspects. What investigators later uncovered was even more chilling. Through a friend of Keith's brother, Vic, detectives learned that Keith had previously sought assistance in plotting his wife's murder. In the months before her death, Jacquelyn had expressed her desire for a divorce, a prospect Keith found unacceptable. Instead, he seemed intent on claiming her life insurance policy, on which he was the sole beneficiary. Just 2 days after Jacquelyn's murder, Keith visited her workplace to request the paperwork necessary to file a claim, an act that only deepened authorities' suspicions. With the insurer advised to halt the payout, Jacquelyn's sons were given time to contest her estate in probate court. Meanwhile, Keith, desperate for money to fund his escape plans, applied for a cash advance on his credit card. The request, however, was declined, leaving him stranded as law enforcement closed in. As news broke that the panhandler story had been a hoax, the nation was stunned by the elaborate facade that had been used to exploit public sympathy while concealing a heinous crime.
I'm trying to be strong for my father, but I can't. I want them to find, if anybody knows anybody, if anybody has any information, please help us and find out who did this to my stepmother, please. And just protect your family. Like, if you love your family, just let them know, because life is too short.
Jacquelyn's mother, living in Rhode Island, was far from shocked when the truth about her daughter's murder finally came to light. She revealed her doubts to the media, stating that she had never believed Keith's version of events. "I knew something else had happened," she said, pointing to the inconsistencies in his story, such as why he would remain in the area after such an alleged attack. The Trevon family, who had never formed a close bond with Keith, began to scrutinize his troubled history, wondering if it had played a role in the tragedy. Nearly 2 decades earlier, Keith had committed a series of armed robberies at the same bank in 1999, driven by personal and financial struggles. At the time, he was dealing with the loss of his job, a recent HIV diagnosis, and the pressures of raising his daughter alone. His desperate acts eventually led to his arrest following a police chase. Keith served 6 years of a 12-year sentence, although police later discovered $20,000 hidden in his home, raising further questions about his motives. Meanwhile, Valeria Smith, Keith's daughter, faced charges as an accessory after her stepmother's murder. Though her involvement in planning the crime remained uncertain, it became clear that she had played a role in covering it up. Battling bipolar disorder and substance addiction, Valeria was seen by some as another victim of her father's manipulative nature. Under Keith's control, she disposed of critical evidence, including the murder weapon and Jacquelyn's belongings, following his instructions. Valeria ultimately pleaded guilty to being an accessory after the fact and agreed to testify against her father. Her testimony during the 2021 trial revealed chilling details. Keith had driven the family to Druid Hill Park, where Jacquelyn, resting in the passenger seat, was brutally stabbed by him. Valeria admitted to helping dispose of wallets and other items and confirmed that Keith had fabricated the panhandler story to mislead investigators and the public. During cross-examination, Valeria faced intense scrutiny from the defense, who accused her of playing a more active role in the murder. However, she maintained that her actions were the result of coercion and that her testimony was truthful, as she sought to separate herself from her father's crime. In December 2021, Keith Smith was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. It became evident that his elaborate lies not only manipulated public perception but also exploited his own daughter, taking advantage of her vulnerabilities. A month later, Valeria was sentenced to 5 years for her role in covering up the crime, her plea deal reflecting the complexities of her involvement. For Jacquelyn's family, the verdict provided some solace. After years of deception and heartbreak, justice had finally been served. Jacquelyn Smith's story is a tragic reminder that appearances can be deceiving. She was a woman with a heart full of kindness, and it was that very kindness that was exploited. This case also serves as a stark warning that sometimes the real danger isn't from a stranger on the street, but from those we trust the most. That wraps up today's case. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to see more true crime stories, don't forget to subscribe to Chilling Fireside Stories. Until next time, stay safe and look after your loved ones.